Assalamualaikum and very good morning to our lecturer, Dr. Nur Hisham, and all of my friends. Today our group will present the bad effect of pesticide and we choose Cyfluthrin. My name is Narshazani Izzati binti Muhammad Yahya, and this is my group member, Faris Faizuddin, Ilana Nadira, and Nurin Jaslina. In our presentation, we will have two main part, which is what is Cyfluthrin, and we will discuss about effect of Cyfluthrins towards human, environment, and also wildlife. And now I will explain about what is Cyfluthrin. Cyfluthrin is an active ingredient that we classified it as a synthetic pyrethroid. Synthetic pyrethroid are insecticide that artificially manufactured. The function is to imitate a natural insecticide chemical that we know as pyrethrum. What I know, the pyrethrum, we can get the pyrethrum from extracted from the crushed petals of the chrysanthemum flowers. And the great things about synthetic pyrethroid compared to natural pyrethrum is that pyrethroids have the advantage of remaining effective for much longer, sometimes up to 19 days of killing power after the application. So Cyfluthrins come in a variety of different formulation, from wettable powders to liquid, emulsifiable concentrates, granules and crack, and it can revise aerosol treatments. Now we moved about the mode of action of the Cyfluthrin. Mode of action is characterized by interference with nerve signaling by inhibition of the membrane sodium channel system in the target organism. Like Cyfluthrin is mainly a contact insecticide and classified as moderately hazardous. Therefore, the chemicals will begin working as a poison after either through physical contact via an insect or ingestion. This allows for a faster knockdown of the target pest and a quicker kills. Then Cyfluthrin will kill the pest by behaving like a powerful poison that detrimentally affect their central nervous system. Once they ingest or come into the contact with Cyfluthrin, the insect nerve cells become excited and eventually they're leading to paralysis. Thus, the insect will not be able to perform the necessary bodily function or survival, such as feedings or grooming. Before long, the insect will then starve to death because of their catatonic state.
Next, I am going to present the bad effects of Cyfluthrin on human. I have divided it into three parts. The first one is the effects on skin, second is the effects if eaten, and the last one is effects if inhaled. So the first one is the effects on skin or dermal. Cyfluthrin is poorly absorbed through the skin, which only around 1% may be absorbed, and we can consider it to be non-toxic. However, there are some of the common symptoms that may occur, which is paresthesia, that involve redness, itching, tingling, burning, and progressing to numbness. So, what is paresthesia? Paresthesia is what we call when there is an abnormal sensation on our skin. And dermal irritation also may become worse if it is exposed to the sun or heat. It will usually soothe in 1 to 2 days, but Robert Krieger in Handbook of Pesticide Toxicology Agents found that the symptoms from severe dermal exposure of pyrethroids have lasted for multiple weeks. Next is the effects of Cyfluthrin if eaten by human. Cyfluthrin is highly toxic if eaten. About 80 to 90% of Cyfluthrin is absorbed into the bloodstream and rapidly distributed through the body. Ingestion of cyfluthrin may cause vomiting, along with burning in the mouth, dizziness, fatigue, and nausea. Symptoms appear within 10 minutes to 3 hours after eaten, typically recovered within 7 to 12 days of exposure, but exposure to high doses of pyrethroids has caused seizures, coma, and also death. The last one is the effects if inhaled. Cyfluthrin is moderately toxic if inhaled. Breathing in cyfluthrin may cause headaches, nausea, and vomiting, which are almost the same symptoms as the effects when consumed or eaten. Inhaling pyrethroids also may worsen symptoms of asthma, and persons with a history of asthma, emphysema, or hyperactive airways disease may be more susceptible to overexposure. In short, cyfluthrin can affect humans negatively in many ways. We must avoid or minimize the pesticide exposure towards us, humans, especially the children, which are potentially more susceptible to pyrethroids than adults, as we, adults' bodies may break down pyrethroids more quickly than children. Young children may also act in ways that put them at a greater risk of exposure. For instance, they may spend more time near the ground or the floor. So, we must take precaution to avoid the pesticide exposure at all costs.
Cyfluthrin effects on environment. Cyfluthrin is H400, very toxic to aquatic life. Warning, hazardous to the aquatic environment, acute hazard. And H410, very toxic to aquatic life with long-lasting effects. Warning, hazardous to the aquatic environment, long-term hazard. What effect does it bring to the aquatic environment? Cyfluthrin is expected to adsorb to suspended solids and sediments. Cyfluthrin affect the majority of the lower tiers of the ecosystem by first, less abundance of phytoplankton, which is algae. Algae is main food source for the aquatic organisms such as fish. Next, second, increased nematodes. Nematodes is plant enemies and it also known as parasite. Should usually bring trouble for plants that involved in ecosystem. Next, diversity of surface dwelling insects decrease. Surface dwelling insects also become one of the food source for the aquatic organisms such as fish. Cyfluthrin also lower temperature tolerance. There is one research on fathead minnows. They expose fathead minnows to the cyfluthrin, and it's observed that fathead minnows temperature tolerance decreased by 30%. That's a lot. Next, cyfluthrin effect on non-aquatic environment. Cyfluthrin become immobile in soil and unlikely to leach, which will become problem for the soil. They also have very low vapor pressure, which is why they are unlikely to leach, and gives off irritating or toxic fumes or gases in a fire. So when cyfluthrin are burned or involved in fire, it will transform into toxic gases, which is dangerous for us and also for animals, for living things.
Now I will present about the effect of cyfluthrin on wildlife. Okay, before we go into the effect here, I will explain briefly on how wildlife affected by cyfluthrin. Okay, the wildlife being affected by cyfluthrin when the wildlife consume the plant or the water that contaminate with the chemicals. This is also known as stomach poison because the poison is indirectly being eaten. Okay, next, aquatic organism immersed in the water that contain high concentration of pesticide. Okay, the aquatic organism also being affected because the water is already contaminated with the poison. Okay, next, wildlife walk on the area that contain the pesticide. This is also known as contact poison because the poison affected the wildlife maybe on their skin or others. Okay, uh, Then can be systemic, contact poison, stomach poison. Okay, for contact poison and stomach poison, just like what I explained earlier. But for systemic, is affected usually at the plant because the poison is being taken up into the plant through their roots or their foliar tissue. Uh, so it means the plant is affected by this cyfluthrin by their systemic part or systemic system. So that's why it called systemic. Okay. Actually, there's many others mode of action on how this cyfluthrin affect the wildlife. But this is just a true example that I choose to put in my slide. Now we will move into the effect of cyfluthrin on wildlife. Okay, just like what has been explained by Nurin earlier, this cyfluthrin is very toxic to the aquatic animals and also aquatic environment. Okay, usually the water resource or the aquatic environment being contaminated by this poison because on runoff. Okay, for example, just like when the place is being sprayed with this pesticide, then suddenly it's raining. Okay, so the poison will go through the near water resource through the runoff. Okay, next, it damages the bees and also the and pollinator. Bees are very highly sensitive to the cyfluthrin. Okay, bee that act as pollinator will be affected by this cyfluthrin because bees are very sensitive. Okay, for example, the place have been sprayed with this pesticide, then suddenly these bees come to eat the nectar. Okay, when the nectar is being contaminated with the poison and the bees eat it, then it will affect the bees and the bees maybe will die. So that's why it damages the bees and the pollinator. Okay, next. Cyfluthrin will poison the animals by stick to their tiny hair and body and paralyze the animals. Okay, this is how the cyfluthrin kill the wildlife. They paralyze the animals, then the animals die. Okay, next, some wildlife may be unaffected. Some may be sickened and killed. Small, young, and all wildlife are likely to be affected by this poison. Okay, actually, this cyfluthrin is not bad to all animals. Some animals can tolerate with this cyfluthrin, but some animals cannot. Just like bees. Bees is very sensitive to this poison, so that's why they cannot tolerate it. But some animals can tolerate, just like a rabbit, a rat, or earthworm. These animals are this cyfluthrin is actually low toxic to these animals, so they not being affected by this cyfluthrin. Okay, finally, affect wildlife indirectly through the change in floral diversity, just like loss of seed and edible sweet. Okay, so when the flora is lost, that the seed and the edible weeds is no more there or lost, then the animals that eat these things will be affected because they lost their food or sources. Okay, so that's all from me and my group. Thank you.